Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. Today, I'm chatting with Diane Sweeney, author of Student-Centered Coaching. This Spotlight episode focuses on how coaches can successfully work with teachers who may be reluctant to be coached. In the full-length episode, we also chat about helping school leaders understand the value of coaching, tracking coaching data, and effective coaching strategies based on Diane's experience in schools around the world, as well as Diane's advice for educators who might be interested in publishing their own educational work. You're not going to want to miss this one, so subscribe to Coach Better wherever you get your podcasts. Today's conversation is a great example of the kinds of learning that happens inside the Coach Certificate Mentorship Program. Wherever you are in building a coaching culture in your school, the coach will give you the strategies, skills, and tools you need to make coaching a success, including lots of resources from Diane's student-centered coaching work. This academic year-long online course and mentorship program will empower you to confidently apply instructional coaching strategies in any situation, from building a coaching program to having coaching conversations to being a leader in your school community. Registration for our next global cohort opens on the 21st of February and closes on the 14th of March. Find out more and join the waiting list at edurolearning.com/coach. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Coach Better podcast. I am super excited and honored to be here with Diane Sweeney. I know all of my coaches listening already know who you are, so you need no introduction. I thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with me today. I'm super excited to have this conversation about all these different questions that I sent you. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm sure it's going to be a great conversation.
Yes, thank you. Diane, can you tell us a little bit about how your work has evolved over time? You've been doing this coaching work for so long and you have so much content out there. How has your journey evolved? How has your perspective changed over the time that you've been writing and thinking about coaching?
Well, it's funny because when I started coaching, I was a literacy coach here in Denver, Colorado, and I had no idea what the job was. And that was a long time ago, so I could see it back then. But still to this day, there's coaches that are in that position where they're hired to be a coach without a lot of clarity on the role, without no real framework or model to follow, maybe some books to read, and that's about it. And so when I started coaching, I just decided that, well, must be my job just to get everybody else to teach like me and to use whatever readers and writers workshop practices I believed in. And I found that I could definitely make inroads with certain teachers. Certain teachers and I just connected, obviously, had a great time working together, and other teachers, not so much. So one time I got a letter from a teacher that just said, "Dear Diane, please don't come back to my classroom again." Yeah, it was just tucked in my mailbox and a little bit awkward. And so what happened then is I started thinking, this has to change. And I don't even know where the kids are anymore in this. I was thinking so much about the adults. I was thinking so much about teaching practice that I honestly realized I wasn't even thinking all that much about students. And we were in a pretty high need school where kids needed us to be precise and doing the right work for them. So at the same time, I was learning about backward design. And that was when that was the big hot new thing. And so it occurred to me this is not just me, this is obviously a tribe of great fellow educator, friend, colleague types. And we were talking a lot about this, and it occurred to all of us that this could be really built on the backbone of backward design. And so that really, if you think about student-centered coaching, you see that it's really about where do we want kids to end up? What what's the success criteria or the steps to get there? And then how are we going to teach it? And so the how are we going to teach it is the last thing we figure out, not the first thing we figure out. And so that progression, another big piece of that progression, I should say, it was very much the student evidence piece. I have to say that's the first move I made when I realized what I was doing wasn't working, is I stopped just bringing the resource materials into the conversation, like the units that the district had put out, like the picture books we were going to use. And I started bringing in the student work to the conversation. And that alone changed everything. And since then, it's just been refining, honing, trying to really help other people implement this and making it super accessible to coaches, because they're overwhelmed as it is. And we try to keep it simple and just keep the tools simple and make sure it's not so overly complicated that nobody can do it. So that's really what my thinking is about right now.
I so appreciate not only the whole backstory, but that experience of not having a framework, not having a job description, and your recognition of like that was kind of surprising when you started, but it is still definitely that way today for coaches and often for the administrators or school leaders who hire them. So I think that getting that conceptual understanding of what coaching is and having that framework, that's like the first step of feeling like you can actually do your job. So
isn't that, it's sad, and in some ways we really damaged coaching over this was like almost 20 years ago when I started in this work, almost like 15-ish years ago. And there's still negative perceptions among a lot of teachers about coaching. And it's because we're all fumbling around.
It is.
And also because it's so much about just that teacher-centered, it's almost too close to evaluation, and teachers see that and they don't want anything to do with that.
And I also think I'm thinking as I'm speaking, so I might not articulate it perfectly, but I think there's a piece of like understanding what the job is. And then there's the piece of understanding how to do the job well so that it's approachable and relatable to teachers. And that's almost two different things, because you can go in and understand what your goal is as a coach, and we're improving student learning and helping teachers refine their practice. But then the way that you do that is another piece that is also often not articulated well. So even if we have the description and those frameworks and those things written down, the way that we get to that point for each individual coach, perhaps in one single school, can be different. And so then not only are we dealing with, let's say, baggage or past trauma of uncomfortable coaching experiences, but now we're dealing with each person does this a little bit differently. And not every person approaches the beginning of a coaching cycle the same way. And that's a whole additional challenge, I think, that we face.
Yeah. And then you throw in the mix the shifting of international school teachers from school to school. And so here they are 2 years later in a new school, trying to figure out that landscape with a different sort of philosophy that's unwritten or unspoken about coaching. And they're trying to figure out, where do I fit in all of this? So yeah, I think having clarity, as Brene Brown says, clear is kind, having clarity on what coaching is and how to do it, and giving coaches time to learn how to do it and be supported in doing it is where I just get so much joy out of my work, because it's like, I can do this.
Yes.
I can do this now, is what coaches start feeling.
Yes. So this kind of segues a little bit into my next question, but I want to ask you like a mini question in advance. When we're talking about clarity and having clarity around our work, I am currently working with a couple of coaches. I run a certificate program called The Coach, and I do some private mentoring. And I'm currently working with a couple of coaches who are, I don't want to say intimidated, that's not quite the right word, but not sure how much of their role they should clarify to their coachees. And my response is always more clarification. The most you can give, the best, because people, like you say, are coming from different schools, different backgrounds, different experiences. What coaching looked like at one school might look completely different at another school. What your impression of it is might be different from theirs, all those different pieces. How do you recommend that coaches explicitly articulate their role, maybe at the beginning of a coaching cycle? Do you have any specific tips or strategies for those people that have a vision of what their job is, but maybe the school doesn't provide them with enough like concrete? How do they just kind of do that on their own?
Yeah. When that's lacking from the school, it's different, obviously. But I think one thing is just to get clear on your own beliefs. Who are you as a coach? Write those down. Write down 5 or 6 belief statements about, and these can serve as commitment statements that you would use with teachers as well. So commitments: I'm committing to you to be asset based. I believe coaching should always be asset based. I'm committing to you to always be about your kids, because I believe coaching should always be about the students in our school. So you can come up with some of those beliefs, and then you can start disseminating that to the different stakeholders. So like through a coaching cycle at the beginning, possibly, maybe even at the beginning of the school year, maybe with the principal. Some international schools principals I worked with did a full-blown coaching isn't presentation to the school that was co-constructed with their coaching team. And not only that, but then they went into their grade level meetings. This was in the elementary division, to their grade level meetings, and talked through it all. Like, what questions do you have? What are you fearful of? What are you worried about? What are you excited about? And so they didn't just present it, but they had conversations about it. So starting to have those conversations is important. And then we're pushing schools from our vantage point to do this work too. So it's happening a lot more than it used to, but it's still, I think more is better as well. More communication, the more clarity, the better. And you do it anywhere you can, really.
Yeah. And I think we have at least sometimes I know I can see us having challenges of making assumptions of what people know and what people believe. And anytime you're basing any conversation off of an assumption, there's potential room for miscommunication. So I think, yeah. So knowing that can be really challenging. So, and knowing that not every school has that beautiful, the principal shares the coaching isn't, and then has the department meetings and all of those conversations. How do you recommend that coaches work with teachers who are cautious or resistant to coaching? And I liked how you were talking about your story earlier, and the teacher piece is the end of the puzzle. How do you approach that with teachers? How do you overcome that resistance to coaching from teachers who might feel like, oh, we're here to look at me and dissect me?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think so much coaching, we're all kind of in agreement that coaching is goal oriented. So it starts with a goal. And so I think the type of goal you start with can really mitigate against reluctance. And so I really view this piece as being essential, that it's a goal for student learning. What do you as a teacher want your students to know and do as a result of our work together? That right there deflects from it feeling like coaching is there to make you implement Go Math, or coaching is there to make you improve something that scored badly on a school survey or something odd like that. It can't be this external agenda that's put on a teacher by someone else, or else teachers know that and they just either outright refuse to do it or just passively are reluctant. Either one is bad, because you can't build partnership on that. So if we set goals for student learning, we're sending a message: hey, what do you want your kids to know and do? And I'm here to be your partner in that. So that helps a lot. I think one other thing is that we really push against even using the word observation. The word observation is it's code for, and I know all your EAL folks know about, the use of language, right? It's code for evaluation. It is almost synonymous. And so we don't use that word. We don't say, when do you want me to come in for your observation? I'm a coach and I'm saying that. Teachers are going to understand that this is not a partnership. This is about you watching me teach and giving me feedback on how I did. And so the other piece too that's really big for reluctance is the co-planning and the co-teaching and how we do it. So when we're in rooms where you can't even tell who the coach is and who the teacher is, it's about shared thinking. It's about not one person modeling a lesson while the other watches. We also try to avoid too much modeling, which has historically been kind of a big piece of coaching. when a coach goes in and says, I'm going to model this lesson for you, it's sending a message that the teacher is below the coach in status or in skills or in ability. So instead it's, let's figure out if I'll happily, we call it micro modeling because we want it to be small. I'll happily model something small if the coach, or if the teacher asks me to, but I'm not going to go in and assume I need to show them how to teach. I mean, it's so offensive in some ways. And I laugh because I did a ton of that back in the day. I tried to model for that teacher who asked me not to come back and it didn't work. So it's not that I'm against modeling, but I do think it can lead to reluctance if we use it too much. So it's just all about partnership and working with teachers on what they want to work on, working on things about that make sense for their students. And reluctance can kind of start being less of a factor. It will always be some kind of a factor when it comes to coaching, but it's far less of a factor.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you are ready to develop your coaching practice over the next academic year, please join us for the next cohort of The Coach. Wherever you are in building a coaching culture in your school, the coach will give you the strategies, skills, and tools that you need to make coaching a success. This academic year-long online course and mentorship program will empower you to confidently apply instructional coaching strategies in any situation, from building a coaching program to having a coaching conversation to being a leader in your school community. Registration for our next global cohort opens on the 21st of February and closes on the 14th of March. We facilitate only one cohort each year so we can offer individualized support for each participant. Now is your chance to be part of a global cohort of passionate and engaged learners, to leverage 40 weeks of in-depth coaching content with practical challenges to build your coaching skills, and to reflect on your practice for the entire academic year with a mentor. Become a certified Eduro Learning instructional coach today. Head over to edurolearning.com/coach to find out more. Here at Eduro, we provide customized online professional learning for educators at the intersection of technology, coaching, and leadership. Our mission is to empower the relentless learner in you to embrace your inner leader and make a bigger impact in your school setting. Join our Coach Better Facebook group and connect with us on social media at Eduro Learning for more great resources at the intersection of technology, coaching, and leadership. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode, and we'll see you next time.